What's going on, everyone? In this video, we're going to be doing the weekly recap of the stocked up trading floor, and the market has returned to its pattern of the year, which is another new week and more new all-time highs. The CPI data on Friday came in lower than expected, basically locking in the rate cut, and the market loved to hear that. So let's get right to this week's recap. Starting out with Monday, October 20th. This was what I would say the slowest day of the week. On Monday, Apple had some decent movement with its call options, and then a couple other stocks like RXRX and kind of NVTS had some decent moves, but nothing really too crazy. I would say this was certainly much like more of a slower and choppier day, especially in terms of intraday opportunities. But as the week went on, the momentum certainly grew, which is always good to see. On Tuesday, the 21st, we saw some great movement with GM call options by 236%, CLF put options by 204%, Google puts had some decent movement of like 79%. We saw a handful of tickers moving like okay ways, and a couple stocks that were kind of more duds than anything else, but decent movement, especially out of GM and CLF. 200% gains is definitely nice, but nothing like too crazy. As the week went on is when most of the opportunity was made available. As we can see on the 22nd, there was some pretty good action on this day, as we had Carvana puts move up by 210%, UUUU calls move up by 198%, Coin puts by 189%, MP puts by 171%, Path puts by 132%, GLXY puts by 132%, Hood puts by 119%, Oklo puts by 114%, QBTS puts by 85%, and then there were a handful of stocks that moved up in like okay ways, and then of course there were a handful of duds sprinkled in as well, but I would say overall decent opportunity. And then looking on the 23rd, we can see again, we saw some decent moves, nothing too crazy, and there definitely was a little bit more noise on the 23rd, as like the VZ puts moved up by 241%, which is great. The T puts moved up by 200%, which is great, and the AA calls moved up by 112%. There were a handful of stocks that had good moves, but there were also a handful of stocks that were just like noise and duds and just, low opportunities / like no opportunity setups. So that's why on the 23rd, I didn't think it was anything like too crazy. The day of the week was certainly Friday, the 24th, as the IBM call options popped up by 787%, which is insane. The F call options moved up by 158%. The open call options moved up by 117%. The AAL call options moved up by 96%. The AMD call options by 42%. And there was really only one dud, which was DEC put options. But, with everything being said, great opportunity set on Friday. And then looking at the pullbacks for the week, as always with pullback setups, they're not as crazy or as explosive as breakout setups, because the best, biggest, strongest breakouts don't pull back. But what's nice about with pullback setups is they tend to be slower, smoother, and like a little bit easier to trade. Looking at them for this week, there certainly were some good moves, like the Dow call options on Thursday, and even like MU and NBIS. Nice good moves, but nothing crazy like the IBM 700% move. But either way, it's nice to see. And then looking at the theta trades for the week, all 4 expired for max profit. Can't really ask for anything more. If you have not considered selling put options yet, consider at least learning how they work, because when you're limited to only, let's say, buying calls or buying puts, there's only so much you can do. Where like with options, what's really nice about them is that you can position yourself to benefit off of like any part of the future distribution that you desire. So like, for example, as you become more familiar with how the options chain works, not only can you branch into like selling calls and selling puts, but also combining them, like buying some calls and selling some calls, like, call spreads, or even doing more advanced things like iron condors, where you buy some calls, sell some calls, buy some puts, sell some puts. And then you could even branch this out into like ratio spreads, where not only are you buying and selling different calls or puts on, various like different strike prices, but you could also buy them in different quantities to tailor your position to the distribution you're looking to capitalize off of. There's an infinite amount of things you can do, but like selling put options is kind of like the first step, because it's kind of the simplest, and also if you do it right, it puts you in a good position. The main thing is that you just only want to sell a put on a stock that not only you're willing to own, but you're happy to own, because if you do that, you can essentially get paid to buy shares of a stock that you're happy to own at a price you're happy to own it at, which is not only a great long-term proposition by itself, and the win rates are pretty high, but also you have an embedded edge where the put options you are selling are technically a little bit more expensive than they should be, which is called the volatility risk premium, which works to the seller's benefit, which in this case would be you. So if you need any help with this, feel free to reach out to Tom, Hunter, Mason, or myself in SM Chat, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. But besides that, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your weekend.